Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ian is a Weirdo. So I'm actually refilming a couple videos for beginners who want to start getting into crochet. I was looking back at the videos that I've done or had done before and wasn't super happy with them, so I decided to sit down today and show you an updated version of pretty much the same thing. So today I'm going to teach you how to chain. This is the first step of a lot of crochet projects, and what you'll need is you'll need some yarn. I'm using a worsted weight yarn. This is usually the easiest to come by in a lot of craft stores, and you can tell that it's a worsted weight by the number. The yarn label will have a bunch of information on it. In one of the boxes or on the yarn somewhere, on the yarn tag somewhere, it usually says a number. It might have a descriptive word. Medium is another way to say worsted weight. You might see Aran, which is very similar to worsted weight, not quite the same, but very close. You'll also see a suggested hook size. I'm going to use something larger to show the stitches a little bit easier, but really you can use a bunch of different hook sizes with yarns. You don't have to ever use what is on the yarn tag. That is just a suggested hook size. So just same thing with knitting needles if you are knitting with the yarn. I'm going to be using Red Heart Super Saver today. I really like this. It's a very reliable yarn. They have a bunch of colors, and especially for learning how to crochet, this yarn is great because it does not split, so that the plies don't peel apart when you're trying to, put your hook in between loops of yarn, which that just makes your life a lot more difficult. So I like this as a beginner friendly yarn, and there's a lot of colors and it's affordable, which is great. But whatever yarn you can use, don't feel limited to this weight or this yarn weight or this color or anything like that. I also like using the variegated yarn, meaning it changes colors, because I find that seeing stitches is a lot easier for tutorials, but also as a beginner you'll be able to see kind of where you're going a lot easier, in my experience. I'm using a crochet hook, and this is fairly large for this size yarn. So this is a 9mm. The ball band recommends a 5.5mm hook, so this is quite a bit bigger. But usually when you're picking out what hook size you're going to use, you go based on like a pattern or kind of what how big the holes between the stitches are going to be, and that makes a difference with the hook size. So this is just going to be to make things a little bit more visible for you. I'm going to be talking about stitch markers. These are some versions of them, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. And then I don't think I'll be using this today, but some scissors or snippies or whatever, they're always good to have lying around because, eventually you're probably going to want to, cut that project off and enjoy the work that you've made. So this is the Red Heart Super Saver. The jumbo just talks about the size of, talks about how much yarn is in this. If you see the Super Saver without the jumbo, it's the same yarn, it just doesn't have as much per skein. So this is a skein of yarn. Yarn can come in a skein like this, so it appears with a ball band in the middle, and it's kind of elongated like that, like, I don't know, like a big burrito or something. It can come in a cake, so it's kind of wound like this, and then I was like, you can't see through my hand. and then it's kind of flat on the top and bottom and then rounded on the sides. You can put it in a ball. It can be in a hank where it's twisted up. You'll see a lot of fancier yarns and hand-dyed yarns, things like that. You'll see them in hanks usually. So yarn can come in a bunch of different delivery systems. I'm going to use the same color, but one that I've already started, so that I don't have to crack this ball open. And we will get started. So this is the color Mexicana or Mexicana, depending on your pronunciation. And we'll just get started. So I'm going to be showing you how to crochet right-handed. This is, all my videos are going to be right-handed tutorials. If you are left-handed, you can mirror what I do, or you can watch other videos from people who are left-handed. You know, I'd rather you learn than, you know, feel frustrated because you couldn't understand something because it was flipped, you know. So do what you need to do to learn. That's more important. So before we can start chaining with our project, we need to do a slip knot. So that's what we're going to start with. So I have my skein of yarn on my left side, so that's going to be, the left side is going to be controlling the tension, how tight my stitches are, basically. So so I am going to have the working yarn on my left, and then I have the tail in my right hand. So there's a bunch of different ways to do a slip knot. You'll see 1,000,001 ways to do it. As long as it's a slip knot, there's no wrong way to do it. One easy way to do it is to take your right hand that's holding the tail and put, so you kind of hold like a little segment between your right and left hand, and you take your right hand and you put that yarn over the left. So you create a little loop like that, and then you can pinch where those cross over each other. Just like that. So you have your loop, and then what you can do is flip that little loop right over the working yarn. Then you take your little fingies and you put those between the loop, and you pull that working yarn right through. So usually you want to leave a little bit of a tail, because you're going to want, at the end of any project, you're going to want to sew in your ends. Depending on the project and how you're sewing in things, you know, everybody has a preference on that. So, you know, mine's like 5-6 inches right now, totally up to you. So the thing about a slip knot is that it adjusts in size as you pull yarn, and that's exactly what we want. We want to be able to adjust the size of that, because what we're going to do is, now that we have our slip knot, we're going to put it on our hook. So I'm going to take my hook in my right hand, because I'm right hand dominant and I like to crochet with my right hand, and I'm going to put the slip knot over the crochet hook. Then I'm going to take the yarn and just slightly tighten that yarn onto that hook. Now I don't want it to be crazy tight, because eventually I'm going to have to go back into that loop with my crochet hook, but I also don't want it to be crazy huge and just flopping all over the place. So something like that, where it glides pretty easily on the hook, but it's not just gonna fly off. And a lot of these things, if I'm like, don't do it too tight, don't do it too loose, a lot of that does take practice to kind of get a feel for what that looks like for you. So if you don't feel like you know exactly what that looks like at first, don't worry, that's perfectly normal. So now we are going to start to chain. We've done our slip knot, it's on our hook securely. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that you can hold your your yarn in your tensioning hand. I've seen all kinds of things, people wrapping it around their finger, you know, pulling it through different ways. However it gets the job done is the right way for you. And you can experiment with a bunch of different ways, see what works, see what I do. What I do does not work for a lot of people, but you might watch someone who does it like this, and that works perfectly for you. So you want to feel like you're in control of how the yarn pulls to against what you're doing on your right hand. So the to chain, it is kind of a two-step process. So I'm gonna hold the slip knot kind of gently on the hook, just to keep it from sliding around. It helps me control it a little bit more. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a yarn over. So to do this, you're going to take your left hand and, or, you know, however the movement happens. Some people, they do it with their right hand and they're moving a lot like this. Some people move a lot with their left hand. Some people move both. So again, it's really about preference, but just getting the job done. Step one, right? So what we're gonna do is a yarn over. So we're gonna take the yarn, it's gonna go over the hook from the furthest away from us to the closest, or you could see it as from right to left, and that would be mirrored if you're doing it the other way, but away from us to closest to us. Then what we do is we are going to pull this yarn that we just looped over through our slip knot. Now I like to kind of twist my hook just a little bit, and I feel like it catches the yarn a little bit better and makes my chains go a little bit faster, a little bit more consistent. So just that little bit of turn, that turn is towards me, and then I'm going to pull through the slip knot, and boom, that's your first chain. And the process continues to repeat. And you might have noticed that I use my left hand to kind of pinch that slip knot as I did the chain. That's going to help I use that to kind of stabilize myself, and also as another method of controlling my tension. So again, these fingers, they can do a lot, and however you want to do it, that is absolutely fine. So just getting the job done. So again, we're going to yarn over. That's going to be step one. So away from us to closest to us, over the hook. So it's yarn over, and then turn the hook slightly and pull through that loop. And let's do it again. And see, if you were moving a little bit faster, you might just automatically start pulling the yarn as you go. It's not as like clunky as what I'm showing you, but it's going to be clunky at first, and that's okay. So we're going to go away from us, towards us, that's our yarn over, and then we're going to turn our hook slightly and pull through that chain. So I've done a couple chains, and they're relatively even, and that takes practice. Every single crocheter to have ever started crocheting, their first chains that they did were not even. yours will likely not be even either. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Practice. It does get better, I promise. You can take your hook out if you want to undo a chain. It's very easy. You can just pull your working yarn and it comes right out because we're just doing loops inside of loops. Now, and then you can put your hook back in. And so now I'm back down to 2 chains rather than 3. So once you get better, you can start kind of going with the flow a little bit more. You'll pull the yarn out of the ball and become a little bit more consistent. Now, some common mistakes and some, also some tips for you as you go forward and create beautiful, beautiful chains is that I think the most common thing is pulling the yarn too tight. So if you have your tension really, really tight, so let's say I'm doing like a big old, wrapping this all around, which works for some people. But for me, I find that I can't move my yarn as much as I want to. So if I pull really tight with my left hand, I'm increasing the tension away from the chain that I'm working. And then I try to pull it through. That's going to be fine. It's going to come through fine this time. And show you, just even with my hold, I can still do tight tension, So any hold can change their tension. But what we're going to lead up to is eventually we're going to be putting stitches into these chains and getting your hook back through these very tiny spaces is very difficult and does slow you down and does aggravate you. So finding that even tension for yourself can be a little bit difficult. The same thing can be said about stitches that are too loose. So let's say you pull up on your right hand a little bit and you pulled this chain up quite a bit, or you were very relaxed and didn't really care about how much yarn you grabbed and things are very loose. Well, it's going to be uneven throughout if you've got these tight chains, these loose chains, these medium tension chains. So kind of as you practice, I would recommend just trying to keep your tension relatively even. It's okay if they're all one or all the other, but just keep in mind that you're going to have to put your hook back through them, and the tight stitches especially are the ones that are quite difficult. So that is something that people who are new to crochet find for themselves, or that it's just a relatively uneven chain, and they have it doesn't look as clean and crisp on the end of the project. So practice makes perfect. Another thing is that, and this I still find for me today, and something that helps, and I'll bring in my handy dandy stitch markers. So sometimes you're doing projects like blankets or things where you have to chain a lot. It could be 100, 150, it could be a really large number, and sometimes it's a little confusing on counting the number of chains you've done. So I like to keep things in manageable portions as I'm counting things, because I don't have to keep recounting as I'm doing things. Because what if you needed 100 and you counted 75 stitches, and then you're like, okay, I need 25 more, and then you're like, oh, I lost count, and you have to count all of that again. For me, pass. So there are a bunch of different stitch markers out there, And there's a bunch of things you can use instead of stitch markers, like paper clips. Although those are a little bit more likely to split your yarn, they are very affordable. Now there are at stores like Michael's and even Walmart, there are stitch markers like these. These are locking stitch markers. You can see that you push them in and out, and these will go into your stitch or chain, and you can lock them in there, and like nothing is going to cause that to come out. There's some stitch markers that are kind of just like C's, or like they're kind of just like swirls, and those can come off of your project. Not super easily, but it's definitely happened to me. So, but some of those like name brand ones, you can get like 6 stitch markers. Oh my gosh, I'm having such a hard time saying this. 6 of them for like $4. I got this, and there used to be twice as many in here, and I've had this for a long time, and I got this off of Amazon, and I think it had like 150 or 200 or something like that when I got it, and I think it was like $7 or $8. So if this can definitely help you, like when I'm doing a big long chain, what I'll do is I'll mark like every 10 or 20 or whatever, and that is a way that I know I don't have to go and recount those, because they're already counted and they're marked. So for me, this is a big thing that I use so that I don't have to count. Also, nothing's worse than counting up once and you get 90, and then you're like, let me double check that, and you count again, you get 91, so you have to count again, maybe again after that. So this definitely helps with the counting and keeping track of things. If you like I said, you are let's say you're like, I hate this, it looks like shit, or it doesn't look good, anything like that. The good thing about these and any crochet stitch, unless it's created a permanent knot, is that you can just take your working yarn and you can pull it out, and all of that work can be redone. Even the slip knot, which is why we do the slip knot, is because we can redo it. So this is one way to start a project. It's definitely not the only way to start a project. There are some great advantages to doing this. It is one of the easiest ways, I think maybe the easiest way to start most of your projects. A downside of it is that when you make a chain and you put stitches into it, it doesn't have any elasticity, unless you're using like elastic, some kind of yarn or something that's elastic and stretchy, but it doesn't have really any stretch to it, where there are other methods that do stretch more. And then there's other ways of starting projects that are better for amigurumi and things that are circular. But this is a really great way to start projects, and very a thing that a lot of beginners start with, if they don't start with granny squares. And even if they start with granny squares, they might start with what's called what it can be like a chain 3 or chain 4 circle. So you make you do your slip knot, you make a couple little chains, and then you connect it like that. So imagine those are chains, and then you do your stitches into that circle. That's not my preferred way to do granny squares or anything circular, but it is an option because some people prefer it that way. A lot of people prefer those projects that way. So I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. If I didn't clarify anything, I would be happy to explain it further. Also, there's a lot of great videos on the internet on how to learn how to crochet, so if my teaching style is not your cup of tea, then I totally understand. Do whatever works for you. That's really what this is about. And I learned how to crochet from YouTube, and I hope that you and it's free, and then you can buy the materials and the yarn colors and make the projects that you actually want to do, which is why I made these videos. So I hope this helps, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.